Good morning to the April 19, Saturday morning, early morning edition. Here I am on the right side. You can see it's the 19th, it's circled. I got up at 4:44 this morning. And I figured, you know what, I'm up, I might as well just stay up. Yeah, it's just, you can see the time up here. See right there, 5:14 a.m., that's what it is. This is my second, oh God, I just lost somebody. Alright, I guess I'm going to continue it up. Facebook just disappeared. So, it was a simulcast. Now it's just... it's just... me and YouTube Live. I have a little problem with my internet connectivity. If it blinks, you know... I may have a setting that's not quite right. It's all very...
It's 5:15.
Technical. Anyway, it's 5:15. Bingo. See right there. My computer just... Every 15 minutes my computer tells me what time of day it is. It's 5:15 a.m. So, Chris Van Hollen went... I mean, this is like crazy. He went to El Salvador to I don't know what, you know. To go meet with this guy. He's standing in a room that's empty because he doesn't, you know, how many, we're wasting taxpayer money to try to get this Salvadorian criminal. He was released from prison. He jumped the border. Apparently, they never took down his name and number, so to speak. During, it was like 10 years, you know, during the Obama administration, I guess. Yeah. Because it was supposedly 10 years ago when he was a gotaway, meaning in the middle of the night he jumped the border. He's been through 2 court hearings where it's been established that he is a 13 gang member. He's got the appropriate tattoos on his, across his knuckles, and yeah, the guy's a scumbag. Well, he hooked up with some American girl, I guess, and had a kid. So all of a sudden he's, you know, according to the liberals, he's Father of the Year award. So Van Hollen goes down there. Senate Democrat senator from Maryland, taxpayer money. He flies down. I have my kid on an assignment to go get us our honey baked ham. That's why that picture's there. It was a reminder that he has to get the ham. All right, so we're having a cup of coffee here. I have my coffee right here. You can kind of see it, a little reflective light there. I add a lot of half and half to it. which is 4% milk fat, which when I was a kid, milk was 4% milk fat. Then it became 3% milk fat for regular milk. And now you have 2% and 1%. Supposedly better for you. Both baloney. Whipping cream is like 8%. Now they reduce it to 7%. That's just their way of, reducing the package size without, instead of giving you a quart, they give you 30 ounces instead of 32 ounces. It's industry's way of, dealing with inflation without increasing the price. So they reduce the product packaging or the milk fat. Anyway, I like my coffee with 4% milk. Today they call that half and half. That's okay. They can call it whatever they want. You can call it a bus. Anyway, pretend we're sitting at Denny's. I sent a message out to 2,500 of my best friends. So both of you now can listen to this. I don't know how many YouTubers we have out there. Because I understand Facebook bailed on this. Sometimes they pick back up, and sometimes they don't. So we'll see what happens. Anyway, the heck with them. This is our Saturday morning special. I said it was possible. You can see I put a green circle around it. How nice is that? Yeah, using one of the... I was just wondering if I could do it. It's amazing. Just one of those Apple tools that's embedded in your application. I'll show you. Watch this. So I hit the little toolbar thing, and then right up on the very top, there's like an eyeball. I don't know what that does. Red eye. There's no red eye. Automatically takes the red eye out of eyeballs in case you had a flash shot. But the next one is a pen with a circle around it. So now I'm going to draw a green circle around my hand, which is ridiculous, but I'm just going to do it anyway, just to show you. And then you hold your finger, and bingo, it produces a beautiful round circle. We'll do that again. So if you draw the circle and you have some squiggles in it, because you just hold it. Oh, look at that. Now you got squiggly all around. Very cool. Yeah. Now if you just do a fast circle and hold it, so now you got an oblong. Yeah. But if you're a little more careful and you do it so it's not oblong, there you go. Now you got an ellipse. If you're trying to highlight a particular spot on the ham. Anyway, so I'm back to normal with my ham with ham. So when I sent a text message to number 4 son, please pick up the ham, because he can pick it up on his way to work. He'll just drive out Glades, get to 441, where the Publix Home Depot Center is, and go right in there, and you'll see the ham store. Hamster. You pick up the ham, pay for it, I'll reimburse, of course. It's about $100 for a 7.5 pound ham. Half a ham, half bone, half a ham. I guess a whole ham is $200. Ouch. We'll take a half a ham. We'll eat about a quarter of it. I'll retain about an eighth of it and let the boys walk off with the ham and the ham bone. Bone in. Honey baked ham. It's magnificent. I resisted it for years. Marilyn says, please get me a honey baked. I said, all right, geez. You know, I was getting the deli. Go into Publix deli and get the finest boar's head ham, you know. And, you know, slice it up and pour honey on it and all this kind of stuff. Nope. The honey baked ham is quite outstanding, yeah. And you know, you just put the whole sucker in your toaster oven kind of thing, and spray it with a little distilled water. And it's not open like that; it's all closed up. This is opened up so you can just see the ham. And it's in foil, so you keep the foil on there. Open up, spray it with a little distilled water because, you know, you don't want it to dry out. Seal up the foil again. Put it in there at like 200 degrees for an hour, and take a look at it in about a half hour. Spray a little more water inside, seal up the thing, leave it in there for another half hour. Stick your thermometer thing in there, you know, internally, just to get an internal temperature. You want it up, you know, about 120 degrees, something like that. You're warming the ham. It's already cooked, so you don't want to cook it again. So it's big enough and thick enough where you have that your toaster oven up to 200. Now, once you get it up to temperature, in theory, you could turn it down to 140, for example, and just to leave it in the toaster oven until your family shows up, you know, and you're ready to serve it, so to speak. And you know, just sit there like in a warming tray, and until you're ready to use it. Yeah. So that's what we're going to do. We're having Easter Monday because everyone's working on Sunday except for two of us. So, you know, we'll wait for our Easter meal on Monday. So people will come over. We have two local sons. They'll come and help prepare the potatoes and the side dishes. We'll have to go shopping to get the stuff. Marilyn has the menu all made out. It's hanging on the refrigerator. I should take a picture of it and put it online here. But you know, so today we'll make out a shopping list and I guess get it today because Publix is probably closed on Easter Sunday. They used to be closed every Sunday, and they couldn't stand the pressure because all the other grocery stores are open on Sunday, so there's enough customer complaints. I wouldn't want to grocery shop anywhere else, quite frankly, because you don't know where anything else is. After a while, you know where stuff is in Publix, because they keep the shelves stacked consistently, so to speak. That's why that ham picture is sitting there. As you know, I do screenshots. Tesla is still suffering from the it makes no sense whatsoever. These liberals and the liberal media is so nuts. They don't like Doge, and they don't like Elon Musk because they loved Elon. He was the poster child for the Democratic Party, and he makes all these electric cars, and it's so climate safe, and No emissions. Oh my God, they loved Elon Musk. As soon as he decided that he liked Trump, he's the worst human being ever born. And let's make sure he's not an illegal alien, because he was born in like Australia or something. Or South Africa. Maybe it's South Africa. Yeah, I think it's South Africa. Then he moved to Canada. His family. Her mother, at least. And then moved from Canada to the United States. And now he's in the United States. He's, done all his citizenship stuff. But now that he has associated himself with Trump, and why is that? Because Trump is trying to save America for his grandchildren, because it's going down a course, why Biden opened up, I know why, but how nuts is it to open up the border and let in 10 million people? You don't know what kind of diseases they have. Just do you remember what it was like to get your youngster in to kindergarten and all the shots they had to have, and you had to prove they had the shots. You had to bring evidence with you before you could register your kid for kindergarten. Whether it was private school or public school, that's how the United States stamped out measles and polio and all this stuff, because you had to be properly vaccinated. Except for the 10 million people that Biden decided to let in, and no one checked for measles shots. They're lucky if they wrote down the names. Forget biometric. It's just, it's terrible. So now all of a sudden there's 8 outbreaks of measles. Why do you think? Because numbnuts let in all these people so they could dummy up the voter rolls or the population rolls, so that some of the Democratic-leaning states would have an increase in population for purposes of the next census report, which comes up, time moves on, 2030 is only 5 years away, and then they recount to decide, who has how many congressmen, not senators, but House of Representative congressmen. So maybe Illinois and New York, gain a seat back from everyone, going to Tennessee, Texas, and Florida to avoid the state income tax. Florida gets, thousands a day moving in. Thousands a day. Can you imagine? People moving from the north to the south to enjoy the climate that we have here. This is being broadcast from downtown Boca Raton, 8 stories above Chops Lobster Bar. We used to go down there almost every evening to have an evening cocktail. And because of COVID, because of that China virus, which is exactly what it is, they were experimenting with virus, and it leaked out somehow. Somebody didn't throw away their gloves properly. Had a little virus was stuck on their shirt. Who knows? You have to be very careful. Anyway, it should be a global ban on which doesn't mean anything. It's just a public statement. A global ban on engineering deadly viruses will end up killing the planet. And then the frogs will take over, and then maybe some little pocket of human beings that didn't get the virus, and they'll repopulate the planet again after about 10,000 years of nothingness. That's why Elon Musk wants to, populate Mars, because we'll end up killing ourselves either with a thermonuclear bomb, or some stupid country like China will engineer a virus that'll kill everybody. Except Chinese. If they could engineer such a thing, they'd be working on it. But that's what some of these bad guys are doing. So. Anyway, so that's exactly why Trump got into political business. Let's say 6 years ago. In 2015, 10 years ago, he started politicking for the 2016 election and ended up winning over Hillary. They overlooked Obama then. They overlooked, Biden then. And Obama kind of, decided, okay, Hillary, you go for it. Obama and his following, since he was an 8-year president, he kind of led the party and decided, all right, Hillary, go for it. So she went for it and almost beat Trump, but Trump won by, about 110,000 votes or something, or 140,000 votes in 5 states, the swing states. So it was a close election, and then Biden won by 110,000 votes in the swing states, and then Trump ran again, and basically he said he's trying to save the country. God, and excuse me, don't use God's name in vain on Easter, pre-Easter. For heaven's sake, sorry about that. Anyway, so that's why Trump, is in the White House. He's trying to save the country in spite of itself, And these politicians, they just want to keep their jobs. That's the sad part about it. Let the next bunch of people worry about it. Van Hollen, standing by himself, Maryland Democrats meet with Roberto Garcia in El Salvador. Yeah, go save a scumbag. That's one of the, that likes to torture young girls. Yeah, oh yeah. He's beat up his wife twice. Anyway, so since Trump got in office, you got these Democrats there. They're trying to, this guy's probably trying to think about maybe running for president. And he's, trying to, be recognized as most people don't even know who the hell he is. Now he's like the laughing stock of the Senate, and anyone that's got an IQ over 80 will realize this guy's just looking for a face recognition, camera. See, I'm here, hello, wave the shiny object. And he's trying to save somebody. Deportation means where you jumped the border, you don't have papers, you weren't legally in this country, you're being deported, and you're a gang member. 2 different court hearings established that he's a gang member, and they caught him somehow. The Border Patrol people, the local police department knew he was there. And someone said, "Hey, go there. You can pick up, one of the leaders." And they snatched him. And the Democrats are trying to, make something of themselves, even though it's so ridiculous. They can't figure out what to do to get to move Trump over and get in the public to get some TV time. So they went down to El Salvador to meet with him. The president of El Salvador said no. The president of El Salvador was meeting with Trump, just last week, and they mentioned something about, could you send him back? And the El Salvadoran president said, no, he's a criminal in El Salvador. He's been deported back to the country, and he's back in jail where he belongs. I'm not letting him back. How do I let out a El Salvadorian prisoner and plop him back in the United States? How do I do that? I smuggle him back in? He jumped the border. I'm not going to. So now we're going to push him across the border? We'd be committing a crime. We're not doing it. So he went down there, and he sat there for a day, and the El Salvadorian people said, screw off, go home. And he sat there for like a day and a half, and they finally said, all right, we'll let you speak to the guy, but you're not going back with him. Excuse me, I have a little bite of my oatmeal raisin cookie, which is marvelous, from the Publix bakery. 24 of them for like $5.50, whatever. Oatmeal raisin, oh yeah. Go ahead and take a bite of something of your own. I got a nice fresh cup of coffee. Let's see if I can show you what kind it is. I took a picture of that's the moon. I have pictures. Oh boy, have I got pictures. Where is that picture of that piece of that K-cup? Let's select this to. Let's try favorites. Let's see if I favored it. I'm going through. Oh, here it is. That's what I'm drinking right there. Starbucks breakfast blend. That makes sense, right? It's 5 o'clock in the morning. 5:41. 5:42 right there. 5:42. Yep. This little time clock you see over here, that's the elapsed time. I've been yakking there for 29 minutes and 27 seconds. Anyway, so there you go. That's what I'm drinking. It's the K-cup, which I put in my K-cup coffee, single cup, single serve. It's the only way to go. Make a pot of coffee, you drink it, you drink a cup of it, then you go back to the pot and the coffee is all burnt and old and, bitter. So you just grab another K-cup, put it in there, and make another fresh cup of coffee. It takes 1 minute and 40 seconds from the time you push the button until you remove a hot, 14-ounce cup of, I put it in a travel mug kind of thing because it's insulated, keeps it warm. But it's an entire show. How warm is it, you say? Just happen to have my digital thermometer. Let's take a shot of it. There it is. 141 degrees. There you go. You see it yourself. You know, the laser pointer kind of, let's see how hot this microphone is. Move it around a little bit. You see the laser light. 70 degrees. And how the microphone, because of my hot air, the room temperature is 68.2 and outside is 73.4. I got sensors everywhere. And I'm one of those, I'm one of those guys that when I was 10 years old, I'd take apart a clock and then put it back together again. When I was in third grade, the teacher went out to go do something. So I got up and stood on a chair and I took apart the intercom. And she ran down to the office. I didn't have the sequence right. She left the room for a short period of time. Okay. So I got up on a chair and I had a screwdriver in my pocket I brought from home. Because I knew I wanted to get inside that intercom and just see what's inside. So I took it off the wall, and it's hanging off the wall with the wires and everything. And the teacher comes back in. I think her name might have been Miss Light. And Miss Light looked at the intercom, and she saw me standing on the chair. I'm like in second grade or something. And she says, "Jimmy, I'm going to take you down to the office. You stay right here." So she went down to get the principal, and she brought the principal back. And meantime, I screwed it all back together again, and pulled the chair away and sat back in my place where I'm supposed to sit. So they come walking back in the office, and she turns to the wall to point to the intercom system that's dissected from the wall, and I put it completely back together again, and I'm sitting there, twiddling my thumbs, and the principal looks over to the teacher and then looks at me and says, "Miss Light, what's the problem?" She says, "He took apart the intercom. I bet it doesn't work right." So she tried it out. It worked perfectly. I made a name for myself in the third grade. I wanted to know what's inside that intercom. I didn't have the sense to do it when the teacher wasn't around. The whole class is watching this little performance. When the principal left, all the kids applauded. Excuse me, I'm going to have another little bite of my, you don't mind, my oatmeal raisin cookie, sipped with a 141 degree temperature coffee. It's 169 when it comes out of the... Actually, I have it set for like 194 degrees. You can set the temperature of the water as it goes. When you close the top on the single cup, it pokes a hole in the top here, right where the K is, and spritzes the hot water in there. That's heated to, it's one of these inline heaters where it heats up the pipe. It doesn't heat up a reservoir of hot water. The water gets pumped through, stainless steel piping that's wrapped with some kind of a heating coil, and it's carefully, engineered so that as the water pumps through, it comes out the other end at 192 degrees. Or 194 degrees, something like that. I measured the temperature, of course. And by the time it ends up in the coffee cup, when it's all done, and then you take your thermometer and you measure the temperature of your hot coffee before you add anything to it, it's about 170 degrees. I add my half and half, whoosh, brings it down to 155. And by the time I get in here and start sipping on it, it's 145. And now it's 141. And in another 20 minutes, it'll be down to 138 or whatever. So you're drinking warm coffee instead of hot coffee, which is fine, because I had a touch of half and half anyway. Anyway, it's got a part number. Look at the number. Holy mackerel. There's a K there on it. Not for retail sale. In other words, the individual. I buy them. It's packaged 6 boxes of 10 of these things. So I get 60 of them per like, $35. It's about $70 a piece. I'm sorry, 70 cents a piece. Yeah. K-Cup. It's April 15th, yeah. So I know where to find that again. So this is all in chronological order, you can tell. Of course, we got Easter lilies. And I have so one magical thing about the iPhone is you whip it out, the cameras, it has 3 cameras that take marvelous pictures. There's the Easter lily, and it's just the flute opened up, and all the little pollen guys are hanging out there waiting for some bumblebees to come around or to wiggle their bodies against the pollen, and then they fly around and drop the pollen on another plant, and it fertilizes it for the next season of growing, whatever. Anyway, so I took pictures. There you go. Macro pictures of the pollinated little things hanging out there to attract insects. So they cross-pollinate other lily plants, so they flower. That's how the birds and the bees, fertilize the plants. Yep. Gulfstream came out with a new jet airplane called the G800. And there'll be some writers. I'm sure I can find some writings now about what a G800 looks. I'm sure the avionics. There's a lot going on in the cockpit of these, these magnificent airplanes. Where you got a building full of, aeronautical engineers. That was a possible, training. When you're in college, try aeronautical engineering. I thought about it for a short time, meaning a day or two, and I thought of. Actually, I didn't know what the heck to do, so I took classes that I did well in, which was physics, chemistry, advanced math. Everyone else avoids that like it's the plague. I liked it, So I took classes like that, and then about my sophomore year, I decided, well, maybe being a doctor would be the thing to do. So then I took a lot of biology classes. The biochemistry that I was taking was perfectly, perfect articulation of that topic for pre-med. I took the medical college admission test, and it was all biochemistry. So to me, it was, I finished the MCAT, that's what I call it, medical college admissions, aka also known as the MCAT. So when you graduate college and you want to go into medical school, you take the MCAT. And if you want to go to law school, you take the LSAT, Law School Admission Test. And all graduates take the GRE, which is the Graduate Record Exam. These are just some tests you take when you, just before you graduate college, you take these tests. If you should take the GRE. I think you have to show up for the test, but you don't necessarily have to do it. Now, I don't know, why wouldn't you do it if you show up for it? I don't think you would not graduate if you didn't finish the test. You just have a bad score in your permanent record in college. Why spend 4 years, 5 years, 6 years in college, and then, not bother doing well on the GRE? Assuming you didn't know what you wanted to do. Anyway. So I took the GRE, I took the MCAT, and I think I took the LSAT also. I don't remember the score on that one, but I did well in the GRE. This chemistry stuff really paid off because a lot of the test it wasn't fair, actually. I didn't think so. I thought it was an unfair exam because it happened to hit, the stuff that I was training with. Now, someone that decided to go to medical school took a lot of biology classes and history classes and other topics that, so you end up with your 120 hours with a biology major, and then you take the MCAT, Medical College Admission Test, and you get you got two scores, like 500 and 510, so you get 1,010, and then of course you don't get in medical school because you're too low a grade, because you got all these other students all over the country that are trying to get in medical schools, and the schools stack them all up and decide who they're going to put in because they want to have likely graduates. So if you're not compos mentis, meaning if you don't have a strong mind. Anyway, so since I trained in biochemistry, I scored abnormally high for the MCAT, and I got like the top 5 grades in the state of the Union College, because it's state by state. So I got a scholarship into several medical schools. I didn't deserve them because I just happened to, train in biochemistry. Well, apparently there was a big push in the medical community to have these students, back a million years ago when I took the thing, and they wanted to make sure that the medical student population was proficient in biochemistry because of all the drugs that are being created, and understand, how they interact with the biology of the body and all this kind of stuff, which no one knew the answers to. They didn't have questions like that. They just asked you, what's the Grignard reaction? I can tell you the page number in the book where the Grignard reaction is. It's on page 179 of the Weber, White, and Manning textbook, which I memorized for my biochemistry class. Yeah, that's what you had to do. Just memorize it. Well, how the hell do you do that? Well, you just read it a few dozen times, which is what I did. Read it over and over and over again. And sooner or later I know where things are in the textbook by page number. I actually got thrown out of a class one time. It was a chemistry class, actually, and Nicholas Poulos, Dr. Nicholas Poulos, said, Mr. Wilson, are you in class? I raised my hand. He says, please stand up and come forward. So I marched forward to the front of the class, in this lecture room setting. He said, you're not a very smart student, are you? And I said, well, I'm not sure. I'm not done yet. He says, you wrote the page numbers down on your answer sheet on where the answers were for the test questions. I said, yeah, so I memorized the book and I knew where the answers were. So when I'd get my graded test back, I could go back and look it up. He said, I don't believe that. You're expelled from this class. So take your stuff and leave the room. So I went back and got my stuff packed up and left as an embarrassed soul in front of the whole class, and everybody was yakking about it for a couple of days. So after class, Dr. Poulos comes over to me and says, you come over to my place and I will verbally give you test questions and you can answer them and tell me the page number on where the answers might be found. Are you willing to do that? I'll give you 20 questions and you can tell me the answer and the 20 page numbers where they're located in the book. I said, okay, let's do that. See if I can do that. So I go to his private quarters. He shuts the door and he sits down and I'm sitting down the other side of the table. And he says, okay, how about, so he rattles off a question. And I said, well, the answer is B, and I think it's located on the left side of the textbook on page 180. So then he goes through, 19 other questions. I give him 19 answers, and I give him 19 page numbers. So for a total of 20 questions. And he said, okay, let's... your first answer is correct. Let's look it up in the book and see if it's actually on page 180. And he says, my God, there it is. Let's go to the next one. You got that one correct. And you say it's page 137 on the right side of the textbook because you have a little R next to it. He opens it up. I said, yeah, it's on the lower right corner of that page. He said, it is. He goes through all of it. He said, that's absolutely remarkable. I said, yeah, now you embarrassed me in front of the whole class. I obviously happen to just know the page numbers by some ridiculous, who cares what page number it is. My grandfather said when you're reading a book, if you can't remember the page number where you left it off, you're not allowed to leave a bookmark. You must remember the page number when you're done reading for the evening. So when you open the book up tomorrow or whenever, if you can't remember the page number, how the hell are you going to remember the story? I got that when I was 9 years old. Okay, so this is the way I do it. He said, oh my God. He said, well, I'm reinstating you into the class, obviously, and you've got an A+ on your test. And of course, you got 100% on this little quiz, which I'll give you extra credit for. How about that? I said, yeah, but you're going to take me back in front of the class and you're going to apologize to me in front of all of them because you embarrassed me to everybody that I go to class with. And it's all over school that I'm a dirtbag that cheated on a test. You unfairly accused me. He said, I will give you a public apology. I'll do it in writing right now. I'll write you a letter and I'll post it, on the wall in the classroom. And the next time we have class, which is Thursday, I will most certainly apologize to you in front of the whole class with my, please accept my apology. I said, okay, apology accepted, but not until you apologize in front of the class, because you embarrassed me to all those folks. And he said, no problem. I'm very sorry. falsely accused you. He said, I've never seen anything like it. And I said, okay, you can't say that again. I don't know why I told you that story, but it's a true story. Couldn't believe I knew the page numbers. I didn't write them down anymore because, I knew what the page numbers were. Why the hell write it down? It just creates, potential friction with other faculty members. So no one other than Dr. Poulos noticed it. So, yeah. Who the hell would be so stupid as to cheat and write the page number down on the answer sheet? When you cheated, that would really be silly. So people that really knew where the answer was, there's probably somebody else that remembers page numbers. I remember when Marilyn and I go out to dinner or breakfast or lunch, I have favorite table numbers. I look over the edge of the lady that does reservations, and I see the seating chart, and I commit it to memory, and I decide, where you sit to me in a restaurant is as important as the food itself. It's like a 50-50. I don't want to sit next to the toilet. I don't want to sit next to the front door. I don't want to sit next to the flopping doors where the people come in and out of the kitchen. So you keep me away from those 4 distracting things: the front door, the bathroom door, the kitchen doors. Those are 3. I don't want to be in those 3 traffic, or in the front, very front, so that everyone's walking by all the time. No, So I'd rather sit in the back corner of the restaurant, but I don't want to sit in a separate dark room. I want to sit in a room where you got doors and windows. I don't like being put in a back room, because then there's only one way out, in case there's some kind of an emergency. I don't know. My mind works that way. So there are certain table numbers. I can tell you table numbers in a number of different cities. Of the tables that I like, anyway, Flakowitz, I like to sit in the teens, all the booths along the whole row of windows, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, those booths, and then against the other wall, and which is the 50s. 50, 51, 52, 53. And there are 4 or 5 tables in the middle of the restaurant that are far enough away from the bathroom and far enough away from the front. Like in the middle, a 4-top table. I don't like sitting in a deuce where you're facing. I like to sit catty corner with Marilyn, not across the table. If you know what I'm saying. So you're looking at this date thing. If I'm sitting where the 1 is, then I'd like to Marilyn to either sit where the F is, that part of the table, or up on the top where the A is. So we're sitting catty corner, not across from each other. All right, that's some of my little personal preferences. Anyway, so I took pictures of the flowers. Let's see, here's a golf. This is after round 1. I don't know how they did yesterday. Scheffler was tied for second place at -7. I guess we could look that up. I don't want to Google search it. Let's do let's just type PGA second round. SCORES. Let's see if that generates anything. PGA Tour Sports second round scores. There we go. Let's put 2025. Whoops. Oh. 2. So those are the search words. We're waiting for that to register. There we go. PGA second round scores 2025. So let's go ahead and touch that one. The Heritage leaderboard. Let's see how ESPN lists that. And there we go. So we have Justin Thomas. Tell you what, he's the guy that just won the Masters. He tees off. So today, Saturday, so this is the third round. And Justin Thomas is minus 12. He's like on a run. Scotty Scheffler was tied for second, and now we see there's an arrow down with a 4. That means he dropped down 4 positions. That's my guy, Scotty Scheffler. He beat everybody last year. He's at minus 8. So he's 5 behind 8 and 4. He's 4 behind Justin Thomas. So that's, he gets a birdie, another guy gets a bogey. He catches up 2, right? So it only takes 2 holes to catch up, to the guy on top. So with 2 rounds to go, 4 behind is not a problem. So let's go down the list. Justin Thomas, Henley, Novak Fleetwood, Tommy Fleetwood, yeah, know him. Scotty Scheffler, Morikawa, we know him. I don't know a lot of these guys. Cantley, you know him. He's tied for 13th. There's Schauffele. He's tied for 22nd. Hovland, yeah. Jason Day. Jordan Spieth. Let's see where the cut line is. Yeah. The end of golf today, I guess. We didn't ask for the cut line, so it's not showing the cut line. Anyway, so second round complete today. So this is wow, Justin Thomas had a 61. Whew. Yesterday. And Scotty Scheffler had a 64. That's not terrible. But a lot of these other guys with 68s and all that. I've touched things, which this made this thing go into. Let's go back. Touch that again. All right, so let's touch Scotty Scheffler. I'm gonna have to endure that. Let's see. So here's the scorecard. So he's got a couple of bogeys. Oh my God. So I guess a green square is a birdie. So he got 2 birdies, a bogey, and a birdie. So he's only 1 under for that round. And then the rest was, yeah. So I'm confused. Okay. So his second round, you got a 70. I guess I misunderstood. What that, let's go to the PGA Tour scoreboard. Keep it simple, stupid. Alright, so Scheffler tied for 6th, minus 8. And he got a 64 on one day, and he got a 70 on the second day. Okay, that makes sense. And the guy on top of the leaderboard, he got a 61 the first day and a 69 the second day. So He had a hot round on the first day. Wow. Anyway, it's hard to repeat that. A lot of 67s and 68s, and Scotty got a 70. That's why he dropped down to 6th place. Anyway, so he's -8. Does not play with a Tesla ball. See here, the Titleist ball. Apparently he does not. He must be a sponsor. They must be a sponsor. They show every player that plays with the Titleist golf ball. Scotty apparently does not. Or he's a secret. And we don't know what kind of ball he plays with. What's the difference? A lot of the players do. You can see all those Titleist labels. So, well, that would lead you to believe if you don't know what to pick the Titleist, because half of the entire professional tour is playing with the Titleist ball. They like it for some reason. To me, they all look the same, but they're different. Yeah, they have slightly different casings and the rubber bands. They're all wrapped, machine wrapped in, elastic rubber bands. If you've ever taken a golf ball apart, which I have, of course. Not easy to take it apart, but I found my way inside of it. And inside there's a core. There's like a little rubber ball in the middle of it, real small, the size of a marble. It's hard rubber. And, specific weights, they have to be certain standards of size, definitely size, diameter, that kind of thing, roundness. I think the number of dimples is, you can change the number of dimples or within certain tolerances. I don't know what the specs are on the golf ball. And that's worthless information, so I don't like remembering things that I don't need to remember. The Masters, there's that. Anyway, so this is called the RBC. I work for RBC. My best years in banking were at Royal Trust Bank, which is part of RBC, the Canadian bank. It's a huge bank. Royal Trust was a $35 billion, looked like an SNL with a huge trust department attached to it. The total assets under administration was like $35 billion, back when a billion meant something. Now you have to talk trillions, which is a lot of zeros. PGA Tour highlights. I'm telling you what, you see where it says YouTube? If you're not sure what to do, go to YouTube. If you have a relatively new flat screen TV, you can find YouTube app that's embedded in your flat screen TV or in your remote control or something. Or, if you can do the internet on your big screen TV, you can get to YouTube Live. And the broadcast, you can see a lot of, space, rocket launches and all that stuff. Our simulcast is broadcast on, it's on YouTube right now, YouTube Live. It's supposed to be Facebook Live, YouTube Live, and Twitter Live. Twitter has been dropping off lately because my internet connection is a little flaky. So I'm just broadcasting on Facebook and YouTube Live. And you can see, welcome again to Jim Wilson's Live. You see the little ticker tape on the top? From downtown Boca Raton. Yes, sirree, Bob. Every weekday at about 8:15 in the morning, plus or minus a couple of minutes, depending on internet connectivity. I'm subject to that, of course. I try to connect up early enough before 8 o'clock so that I can be on time, but sometimes I've been knocked off until like 9 or 10 in the morning. So I broadcast late. You can always view what I have to say later in the day. You don't have to wake up at 5 a.m. Today is Saturday special, and I happen to be up at 5. I was actually up at 4:40. Took me 15 minutes to get my coffee made and crank everything up here. I got a little studio thing with all these iPads. I'm using old iPads for devices. Like this old iPad over here. There's a message there. It's important. Let me find it. Actually, because you need to do this. Where is it? All right, I'll find it. Just by looking at it. I'll find it on the screen. Hopefully. Oh boy. Oh, here, I know what to find. I'll just go to iOS. See, and it says it right there. This is on my iPad. This one here is a new modern one. I sell my old stuff to, you ever go up to somebody and say, well, make me a deal. Make me an offer, And that's the name of this website. Make me an offer. But instead of make me an offer, it's Mac me an offer. MACN me an offer. Anyway, let's do this first. So this iOS update you need to do. It has all kinds of security bug fixes, and it's recommended that everybody do it. See, recommended for all users. Right there on that message. So this is 18.4.1. So everybody should go to their Apple. You go to, you can see on this list, you touch General. Here's Accessibility. And here's General. You go to Software Update. And so, here it says I'm up to date. Well, your device may say something different than that. Because you may be on version 17 point something. So you want to get to 18.4.1. You want to stay up to date with these. Notice I have beta turned off. So this is full version, no beta stuff where you're going to try stuff out before it's been debugged. Don't do that unless you're, really. I'm relatively technology oriented person, even at my advanced age. But unless you really know what you're doing, I don't recommend you play with beta. I've been a beta tester for Apple for, 10 years or something. But I decided about 2 months ago that I'm going to get off the beta because they're getting ready to release the total unbugged, version 19. So I figured, okay, let's get off the beta now so that I can get a couple of updates that are not beta. So I'm ready to accept, in June, about June, July, version 19 should be available. And you have all this AI stuff that's incorporated now in the software, so you want to stay up to date and read about what's going on. You carry these personal communicators around with you, these iPhones, which are magnificent computer devices that actually also answer calls. People used to carry these things around because, you wanted to be able to not miss a call when someone tries to reach you. That's why I carry it around. But it just so happens that it is the most spectacular computer device that is more powerful. If you have a computer on your desktop, on your desk, 4 years ago, the iPhone today is more powerful than the most powerful computer station that was sitting on a desk 3 or 4 years ago. No, I heard a noise in the kitchen. It's... Hold on 1 second. Alexa, stop. Sorry. The speakers in the living room had a radio station playing, so I just turned it off. The Alexa thing. Gotta be careful. Oh, I said computer. You can change the keyword for the Alexa stuff, and I have one of the little ball things that has a clock in it. A white clock that shines from the inside, and I call that computer. And I use the computer word, and my speaker on the living room heard me, and it started playing music. Oh my God! And it's 6:30 in the morning. I don't want to wake Marilyn up. I'm trying to be quiet. Yeah. Anyway, getting back to the software update. General software update. Now I'm up to date. 18.4.1. That's where you need to be. So go to your device. It is the most spectacular computer device that you can own, and it also answers call. But text messaging, I love. Email. Now I've been teaching at FAU for 20 years. I've been on the faculty since 2013. Right? 2003. Whoops. 10 years before that. Yeah, because I published my book in October of 2003. And that's when the College of Science, with a unanimous vote, put me on the faculty of the College of Science. Thank you, Dr. John Harlan. He was my buddy that introduced me to other department heads in the College of Science, the ones that speak up in the staff meetings. He said, you need to meet 4 of them or so, because they'll ask, who's he? So this way, they won't ask who he is, because I'm going to introduce you to him before the next staff meeting, because then I'm going to bring you up and have you voted on, because everyone's got to vote to have you admitted to the faculty. And we want everyone to vote yes. And there are only 3 or 4 guys that speak up in the meetings, so let's meet them, which was a good move, because I met them. They're nice fellows, and I had a chat with them, and I told them what I do, and they were impressed. And, with a 15-minute, there were a couple of them at a time. I think I met 4 of them. And met them in John Harlan's office. Anyway, so I met those 4 guys. And, there's like 15 or 16, 18 faculty members in the College of Science, that were department heads, I think is what their titles were. The head of the physics department, the head of the chemistry department, the head of they have all these different departments. Just the College of Science now. And so I got a letter from Dr. Harlan on October 13th or October 17th. It says, we are pleased to announce that we have accepted your request to be on the faculty at FAU. There's something on that order. And you have achieved adjunct faculty status. The difference between me and the other faculty members is that I wasn't like on the salary. I got paid by filling up a class, and then the College of Science would pay me. Now, after a couple of years of doing that, I turned it around. I met with the dean via email, I think, or maybe I talked with him one-on-one. Dr. Russell Ivy. Good man. Yeah, I like Russell Ivy. And he was a buddy of Harlan's, too. So, birds of a feather flock together, my mother always said. Meaning the people that are similar to you, you get along with them, Birds of a feather flock together. Birds of the same feather, they fly together. They flock together, right? Get it? Okay. Anyway, so I had a conversation with Dr. Ivy, and I said, you know what, let's try this. I'll collect the tuition from the students on my next class. It's roughly 400 hours, $399. I get 100 per student, and then I get, then there's another 140 for the textbook. I'll collect that, and then you'll get the rest of the money. So you get roughly, $160 a student, and I'll get $230 a student, something like that. And so I was responsible. So I basically paid myself, and bought the books from Pearson Education, handed out the first day of class, so they wouldn't have to fiddle around with going to the bookstore and all that. I just bought them myself. And I wrote the book, so I communicated. I got them somehow. I figured out how I got them. Not important. So the reason why I did that is, if I do it the other way, where I let the FAU university, 30,000 student university, and the students pay the university, I get my check, like 9 weeks later or something. By the time it goes through the system, and then they got to audit it, and then they write me a check, and they mail the check, and I get the check. And it's like six weeks later after the class is done. They don't even do anything until the class is finished. But the other way, I collect all the money, and, all the money is collected before the first day of class. Then I just write a check to the College of Science, and so I'm paid right away. So I get fully paid on the first day of class, as opposed to 6 weeks after the last day of class. And Russ Ivy was fine. He said, you write me a check, make it payable to the College of Science, and then you don't have to go through that whole administration building. I said, yeah. I said, it works for me. You don't care, right? He says, no. He said, you'll write me a check, I'll put it in the College of Science, and, I'll go buy equipment and stuff. And I don't have to worry about, going through the administration either, when he wants to buy stuff, for his College of Science. Yes, sirree, Bob, turn it right around. I get paid first. That's the way to do it. You have to use your noodle. Anyway, so keep your iPhones up to date, because there are a lot of dirtbags out there, and they're trying to break into your device. And if you're anything like me, everything is on the darn iPhone or your iPad, and your iPads all sync up, together. So everything that's on this iPhone is in the iPad. All the apps. Let's go look. About. Look at that. Look at it in the middle. Oh, you can't see. Please go full screen on. Where is that? Oh, there it is. We're going to go full screen there, so you can see the numbers are cut off with that when you have two cameras going. I've actually cheated the system a little bit. I got my iPhones plugged in to where the software thinks it's a camera, but it's actually the output from my iPad. So you see right here, So here's general. Then I hit the top one that says about. I'm going to touch it because it's a touch screen. And there's all the information about this particular iPad. You see I have Apple Care Plus, which means I'll touch that, see what it means. It means I have accidental damage. I have hardware, whatever. I have express replacement. So if the thing is totally screwed up, they'll send you a new one. But they'll put a hold on your credit card for the $2,000 for the iPad until you give them the old one, and then you have to send it back to a thing. I don't know if, I think I got a little pushback when I had a broken iPad and I took it into the store. I said, you know what, I'm not going to be out of pocket for $2,000 for you guys screw on here. Here's the iPad. You try to get it going. If you can get it going, then we don't need to do the express replacement. I can't get it going, and I think I know what I'm doing. See how you do. I love to go into the Apple store, and when you go into the Genius Bar, I used to walk in there with a question that I knew they wouldn't be able to answer because I couldn't answer it, and I'm relatively knowledgeable about these things, relatively speaking, as just a regular citizen. I walk in there at 72 years old. They think, I can't see straight, which I probably can't, but, and I ask a question, and they look at each other, and they say, they try this and they try that, and they say, well, Mr. Wilson, we need to go to our knowledge base because we can't seem to figure out what's the matter with your device. I said, well, good, I couldn't figure it out either. So since both of us don't know what's happening, go to your knowledge base. So they type in the question to some senior guy in California somewhere, and they didn't know what the hell was wrong with it either. So they say, okay, we'll just replace your device. We can't figure out what's the matter with it. I love it when I stump the professor. Anyway, so this is my Apple Care Plus. I pay monthly, about $13, I think. Might be $13.50. And you can see here's Apple support. So I have 24/7 priority access. That's covered. Replacement, hardware service. So if you accidentally drop it in the pool, which the chlorine will kill it, they'll replace it. You bring it in a baggie, and they'll ship you out another one overnight. Yeah. Anyway, let's see. I'm going to touch the tab that says Apple Support. Let's see what happens when I do that. And it says, okay, welcome to Apple Support. Well, you're welcome. Continue. Allow. I'm going to allow them to keep. Which product do you have problems with? See where it says the top one says this iPad. Let's do that one. What's the problem? We have physical damage, device performance, subscriptions, purchases, password, security. What's more? What's that do? Oh my God, you got all these different things. Let's go back. Let's say physical damage. And we'll do accidental damage. See what happens there. I'm not going to do this. So you make a reservation at the Genius Bar, and you get in-person support, and there's a $99 fee. So that's like a deductible. So, I mean, the iPad's $2,000, with all the extra memory and the way I order it. It starts off at $1,100 and ends up to be $2,000 by the time you're done. Plus tax is $2,150 or something. Some crazy number for an iPad. restore, I know all this stuff. So if your iPad you can't get it working, you go into the Genius Bar, the very back of the store. They put you on a list and they call you when they get to you. If you don't, you can make an appointment. You make a reservation, see? View locations. We're going to be done because we don't want to do any of that. Here's all the different kinds of devices. We're going to go back to settings and we're going to go out of there. I just wanted to show you the Apple. Always get the Apple Care Plus. So that way if you lose your iPhone, someone steals it, you drop it in the toilet, you can get it fixed because, these things are very important in our lives today. And you want to make sure you have the right support. And for 10 or 12 bucks a month, I think it's a little cheaper for an iPhone than it is for an iPad. So I get the monthly support. So I have a terabyte of capacity of onboard storage. It's all software. It's not a spinning disk. It's a solid state bunch of chips inside behind the screen. I mean, this is my iPad. No, I can go full screen now, folks. Let's put me back in. There we are. I'm over here. Now you can't see the results. You've seen enough of that. Anyway, so now we're back where we belong. And we go to the pictures because this is how I keep track of, what I want to talk about. Here's some sunrises. Look at that. That I took last week. That's coming that's right off the Atlantic Ocean. We can see the Atlantic Ocean from my balcony. There's just as it's coming up. That's about halfway up. Yeah. That's when they look at that. Now this is a moonshot taken from my balcony this is at 12:33 a.m. I'm looking out my balcony and I see this giant moon. You can see it's right by the edge of the roof of the building that's a couple of streets away from me. And it was right by the roof. And I figured, now that is a picture. Now this is taken with a stupid iPhone. This is actually a little video. See how it's moving around? So I clipped a frame of that, and there it is. You can see the shadows of the moon. It's got little edges on it, but what the heck? It's an iPhone picture. This is a little video, and you can see the progress bar in the bottom there. And I'm adjusting the brightness setting of the lens. And right at the end of that, I got it the way I wanted it. And then I just did a freeze frame at the end here. I did pause right now. And there, look at that. I just hit the pause button. Now look at that moon. That's the way to capture a moon picture with an iPhone. Is do the video, because it automatically sets the exposure better. Because what happens if you take a picture, the camera system measures the average brightness of the whole picture, and it will brighten up the wall. And then this is burnt out, so it's all white. You can't see any of the moon, shadows like you see right there, which is quite spectacular in my view. Taken with a stupid iPhone. I mean, can you imagine? Whew. Anyway, my son sent me that, and I went and verified it. Yeah. Here's, if you like to, make a shake, where you open up this package and you pour it into, let's say 8 ounces of real cold water, and then you put a scoop of ice cubes in there and then grind them up. Then you put the powder in there and you put the lid back on the blender and grind that up until it makes a nice cold chocolate shake. It is so good. It's a whole meal. You have that and you're not hungry for the rest of the day. And here's the founders of the company, mother, father, son. There's my shake sitting on the counter. I took a picture of it just for nice to flush. Here's the 3 flavors. You got strawberry, vanilla, and chocolate. They're all good. Yeah, it's just a matter of you can mix it up. I prefer the chocolate one. Now
45.
you can get the vanilla one. I have all 3 flavors. Marilyn sometimes likes the strawberry one. But I'll use the vanilla one, and then I can throw a couple of grapes in there, or 2 or 3 cubes of watermelon. So you have a watermelon flavored shake, and that's best to use the vanilla shake if you're going to add like watermelon. So you mix it up and add some flavors, and it makes a nice shake. With the it's nice to have grapes. The big white grapes. Doesn't matter what color, but when it's in season, buy a bunch of the nice green grapes. Take each off the stem, put them in a baggie and put it in the freezer. So now you got frozen grapes. So, during the year, you can go into that baggie and get 4 or 5 of those frozen grapes, throw it in the shake and blend it up with the ice and the powder and the milk and the water, and it will make a nice little grape flavored shake. So you just take the grapes when they're in season and freeze those little suckers so you can add them later on when the grapes are out of season. Just leave them in the freezer and use the fresh grapes, while they're in season. And then when they're out of season, then you go to the freezer. Yes, sir. I haven't tried that like with watermelon. I think that would, I guess it would work. The watermelon freezes, and then, the watermelon flavor isn't going to go away. I'll try it with watermelon when watermelons come back in season during the summertime. Cut a chunk of watermelon, a 1-inch cube, and line them up and put them in the freezer. I'll probably put them on a board or something, because they have to freeze separately, or else you got a hole. You'd have to bang it apart with a hammer, right? So freeze them on a board, and when they're all frozen, then put the frozen squares in a Ziploc. Put it back in the freezer, and then you'd be able to take a cube or 2 and put it, in your vanilla shake. Anyway, so Isogenics. Isogenics.com. Or you can look me up, Jim Wilson, and buy it under my, you like join a club, Isoline Pro, that's the shake you want. 16 grams of protein, that's whey protein. Get the packages if you can. instead of these canisters, because when you open up a canister, it's sealed until it's unsealed. And when it's unsealed, you got to use it up or it spoils. But if you buy the packages, you only open one at a time. They charge you a little more because it's individually wrapped little packages, and you just cut the top off and then dump it in the container to blend it. So that way each package is sealed at the factory and you can't contaminate the contents by handling the package. But you buy that big canister and you open it up, then you have to use it all or it goes bad. The humidity gets in there and makes it clump and all, then you got to throw it away. Particularly down here in Florida where you got all this humidity. There you go. There's a picture of Trump when he was running for office. Actually, this is now. I think it's an old picture because I don't think he's been to the border since he's been elected. He's been there a number of times, so it's not like he needs to go there to see what it's like. And there's no one there anymore because he's sealed it off and no one's trying to jump the border anymore. You don't need a new law, you just need a new president. That was his campaign pitch, and he's right. We have all kinds of laws to prevent people from jumping the border. It's just that Biden chose not to enforce the law. That's why you have a lawless society, and that's why you have all this crime, because stupid Democrats won't enforce the laws we got. The laws makes it safe for all of us. You don't lock up the bad guys, then the bad guys lock up you, so to speak. Anyway, Trump authorizes military use of the public lands along the southern border. So they're using every little wiggle they can to get all kinds of, you get the military on the border, you get the border security people on the border, you just load up that border and just stop it, fill up the tunnels with concrete. If someone tries to tunnel underneath this superstructure, which, is 30 feet above ground, but it's 8 feet below the ground too. They dig big trenches of reinforced concrete. So if you're going to tunnel, baby, you're going to have to dig down, 10 or 12 feet under the earth to get underneath the border wall, which, when you're trying to sell drugs and you're making hundreds of millions of billions of dollars in profit, you'll do anything to try to poison our kids. And they're making a fortune doing it. Either by smuggling people or by smuggling drugs into the United States. And that's why Trump is installing this wall across our entire southern border, separating ourselves from Mexico, because you got all those banditos trying to infiltrate, and 150 other countries, since Mexico isn't enforcing their borders, that doesn't mean we're not going to enforce our borders. And it's going to take us a few years to settle down the crime wave in this country because of all this dirtbags that have just walked in the southern border. And they walked in from 150 different countries, including the Congo and including all kinds of places you've never heard of. Yep. So, and you have prior romantic relationships with Taylor Swift, who's a magnificent performer, and they come out with stories, and it makes her embarrassed. They do that to make money. So the Siemens executives who manufactured this helicopter no, I said that wrong. The gentleman and his family, the gentleman happened to be a Siemens executive, among the 5 that died in this helicopter crash, including the pilot, so the 6 dead. And from my guess of what I read, is you see these big props that's painted white, red, white, across. Well, they're on a hinge. See this bolt that's going up and down. There's a bolt right there going up and down. And there's a bolt going up and down. And then there are bolts left and right. And they can turn the blades. And that's when you lift up. They turn the blades, so that this leading edge is down. And then when that thing's rotating, it scoops the air and it goes up, That's how you lift up in a helicopter. Well, my guess is one of the blades flew off, just broke loose, and it's spinning, it's 600 RPM. I've been in a helicopter before several times, a number of times, lots of times actually, because years ago you didn't have drones. So if you wanted to take an aerial photograph of a particular property that you may want to buy, because we are in the commercial real estate business. I've been a commercial real estate broker for 20 or 30 years. And so we would charter a helicopter, and then I'd bring my camera with my zoom lenses, and I'd shoot out the window to take pictures of, shopping centers that we were building or properties that we wanted to buy. And I'd need those aerial photographs to show it to the banks, because we would use, I had banks that would lend me money, one at a time. I wouldn't go to several banks for one deal. I'd go to one bank for one deal. But I might have to meet with 2 banks because one wanted to do it and another bank didn't want to do it, so you try to find a bank that'll do what you want done. And after a while, you figure out what banks want to do what. Anyway, so I have experience in helicopters, and I know that the props run from 4 to 600 RPM, and then they change the pitch on the blade to accelerate you vertically up, and then when they get to a height that you're happy with, like 400 or 500 feet up in the idea of taking pictures, and then they relax on the pitch of the blade when you're up around 400 feet, and they can change the angle of the shaft so that it goes forward or backward, left or right. That's the actual pole right there. They actually change the angle of that pole in relation to the cabin, and that leans it forward or back or whatever. And then they have another on the joystick where they change the pitch of the prop, to go up higher or drop you down lower. Anyway, my guess is one of those props broke loose and flew off. They're heavy and they're big and they're long, like 20 feet long each, or 15 feet each. And when one of them breaks loose, then the other one, you don't have a counterbalance. So it just shook itself. It just broke the whole thing in half. And, the chopper drops out of the sky like a heavy rock and flipped upside down and smashed into the water and killed everybody. Yeah. I'll bet you one of those props broke loose. That'll be in the final report, which we'll learn about in a month. Well, they're trying to figure out what else happened. Yeah. Excuse me, I'm adjusting the microphone so that I don't overmodulate. Anyway, that's what happened to that helicopter. We'll find out. So something happened. A bolt snapped. So they'll get metallurgists. I had a degree with metallurgy in there. I took a number of classes of metallurgy where you learn about metals and their strength, how to make them stronger, and how they are weaker or stronger depending on the heat treatment that you could apply to metals, bolts, pins, all those kinds of devices that are used right in that little section of the prop blade. Right there. Those bolts. So one of them snapped. There's a lot of pressure on that bolt when it's spinning. There's a huge amount of pressure in around the blade where the hole is drilled. There's all kinds of metallurgical issues with this section right here. It's not the motor, it's right here. That is, if you wanted to, so here's my edit. We're gonna just brighten that up a little bit. I'm gonna touch you can see where my finger is on the other side. I'm gonna touch the pen. It's the second icon over here on the very top. Touch that, and I get the pen, and I'm going to make it red in color, and I'm going to draw a circle right around the issue. That, and I'm going to hit done. Done. Bingo. Now we have, now that circle is in the picture. You just saw me do it. That is the problem with that helicopter crash. And there's going to be a picture similar to this one. Although you see that big F, that red F on the top left corner. You won't see that in the picture. That's Flipboard. This is the front screen of Flipboard back on Saturday, April 12th. Which is a day or two after this thing, just self-destructed. This is not pilot error. This is a mechanical failure. I don't know how, according to news reports. See where it says New York helicopter with a, with a picture of the Liberty. So this New York helicopter service, you'd call them up and say, hey, I'd like to have when's the next time I can take a tour? And they have a planned route that they go and they show off the city of New York, which is a magnificent, one of the largest cities on the planet and one of the oldest cities in the planet. In a very sophisticated country, so to speak. And these people are from, I think, Sweden or something. And they came over here to enjoy the sights and the sounds of New York City. And one of the things they decided to do is to sign up their family. And the whole family went into this helicopter. And, it probably cost them, $1,000 to take, I'm guessing on that. But the Siemens exec, so it's, I'll bet it's 1,000 plus or minus a couple hundred. I don't know what it is. You can Google it. This one's out of service, I'll guarantee you that. That helicopter shook itself to death. As soon as one of those blades popped loose, the entire thing would disintegrate. And that's what happened. It broke in half. This is a picture of the helicopter before it disintegrated. And inside that circle is the problem. One of those blades popped loose. And it spun off, so it's several thousand feet away from the crash site. They'll find a goddamn helicopter. I'm sorry. Don't use God's name in vain. But it's so sad. But there's a helicopter blade somewhere, within a couple 1,000-foot range of where this thing went down. There's a big piece of metal that looks like a helicopter blade that's stuck in the side of a building somewhere, because it probably was, several hundred feet in the air when that blade spun loose, and it broke off. One of these bolts snapped, or the metal of the blade, fatigued, fatigued. Wore out, fatigue. I use the word fatigue to remind me how to spell the word. Fatigue is the proper pronunciation of the word. Metal fatigue. You're going to see that in the report. I have a degree in metallurgy, or I have a degree that contains metallurgical studies as in my chemistry major. Part of the chemistry major deals with metallurgy, the study of metals. And we have metal fatigue, or maintenance, improper maintenance. Maybe the screw there's a bolt under there, maybe it wasn't tightened properly. Or maybe the bolt was threaded, where all the threads wore off. Maybe it wasn't maintained properly. Maybe it wasn't inspected properly. Maybe all of the above. Maybe the metal just gave out from what we would call metal fatigue. You got this piece right here that which I could draw a square box around. If we want to play games. Want to play games? Let's play games. So I'm gonna hit the edit button again, and I'm gonna grab that pen, and I'm gonna color this one. Let's color it. What color should we use? Blue, yellow, or green? Let's use yellow. And I'm going to draw a box. Hold my finger there, and it should convert to it. It didn't do it. We're going to cancel that. Expand that. I think there's limits on how much reverse pinching you can do. Touch that pen. There we go. Yellow. Where's my pen? I'll do it with my pen because my finger's too fat. And I'm going to just draw a box around the culprit. Hold it. There we go. It's at an angle because I drew it at an angle. We don't like that. I'll go back and do it again. There we go. Get my hand over here. I'm dealing around this stupid microphone and everything. I'm going to draw a box around one of these and try to have that box. Hold it. There we go. So we're done. So now I'm out of the edit picture. So now we can come in here and see. That's what I mean. It has something to do with this section right here. This is the culprit. Now it's either on this side or the other side. One of them snapped loose. And it's either metal fatigue or maintenance. And well, if it's metal fatigue, you know what that means? That means every helicopter that was made plus or minus 5 years from when this was manufactured, they would have to check metal fatigue for all other helicopters that have these bolts, these blades, or this, whatever they call that device that's holding the blade. Metal fatigue. So they're going to check every other helicopter because the FAA is going to come out with they have a team of people that are doing that, presumably, because this is April 19th. This is, when did I get this picture? April 12th. So this is a week later. Wow. A lot has happened since then. So this is probably 10 days after the accident. Okay, because this picture is probably 3 days after the accident, I'm guessing. Or at least 2 days. So, if it's metal fatigue, and they're looking at this sucker, right now, and they're checking out the remains of what they've pulled out of the river, you could take care of bodies and all that. It's just terrible. But they got to figure out what happened. It's not pilot error. This thing, just self-destructed. And unfortunately, the way a helicopter operates, you got these spinning blades opposite each other. And if one breaks loose, the entire helicopter will just shake itself to death. It's 600 RPM, and that thing, it just completely breaks it just snapped the whole fuselage in half. And that's what happened. The back tail broke loose. The thing turned upside down and crashed. And, because it completely got out of balance with weight and all this stuff. And you got people inside that are getting slammed around inside of there. So they're probably dead before they even hit the water. Just from the shock of being smashed side to side at 200 or 300 RPM. You're like in a blender while it's going down, so I'll bet you they were completely knocked out, broken necks or whatever, before they didn't drown. They were dead before they hit the water. My guess is we'll hear that someday. There's the exhaust. You can see the effects of the hot air coming out of the engine. But metal fatigue, that's what killed this helicopter and its contents. And once they determine that's it, because they'll see cracks in it. They'll see how it pulled apart. Or maintenance. Maybe there wasn't metal fatigue. Maybe it was just terrible maintenance. They weren't maintaining it right. I understand there were several reports where inspectors noticed maintenance wasn't done properly, maybe, or checklists or something. So these helicopters were, 12 hours a day, they're out flying around, because they have groups every hour that are using the helicopter for a variety of different purposes, mostly tourism. So it's either, it's in this area because the blade came loose. No, it either came loose because of maintenance and bolts weren't tightened, weren't examined, weren't looked at, or this whole fixture had metal fatigue, and they should have replaced that piece. So it could be metal fatigue and maintenance, because maybe the other one had metal fatigue but didn't break loose. They'll be studying that, I guarantee you. And this is exactly right in there on the zeroing in on the culprit. It's either on this side or the other side, or both sides. It's just that one snapped loose, and then that completely destroyed the helicopter. You can't have two blades spinning around at 500 RPM. Those blades are probably weigh 1,000 pounds apiece, and when they're spinning at 500 RPM and one breaks loose, the entire airfoil is lost, and the helicopter completely shakes itself to death. Rapidly. The vibration would be tremendous if one of those blades break loose, because they're spinning at 500 RPM. I can tell you, or 600, somewhere in that range, because that's what they spin at. The smaller helicopters, they spin a little faster than the big ones.
7:15.
But they have to spin that fast in order to get the lift when they change the pitch on the blade, which brings it up. That is the culprit right in there. We'll read about it, though. It's probably, there'll be some news thing on it, and you'll have to go to some aviation magazine, and there'll be smarter people than myself that'll be talking about that is the culprit. I'll bet you 10 cents. Maybe it's something down inside. It could be all kinds of other things, but this is the place. If I was one of those FAA people, I'd be looking here first. Then you look at everything else. I don't think this whole shaft could have snapped off. Who the heck knows? I don't think that was it, because it broke in half. If this whole shaft broke loose, the blade would spin off, and the helicopter would just drop straight down. But it flipped upside down, and the back end, this whole back piece, snapped off. So that's because of the vibration, because one of these blades broke loose. I'm just looking at a still image here, but you have to figure what the heck happened. I'll bet you one of those blades is, and they'll be looking all over the city trying to find one of those blades, because they want to see what it looks like. What that was. There metal fatigue around where this joint is, because there's a hole in that blade, and there's a lot of pressure where that hole is, because that sucker's spinning around, and a lot of pressure from the pulling action. When you have that blade spinning, there's a lot of centripetal. There's a lot of energy pulling outward from that center when that's spinning. Is the name of that, which escapes me at the moment. It has to do with centripetal acceleration. But anyway, it's what keeps the satellites up in the sky. They circle around the planet. But when you have something rotating like that, there's an outward pressure going this way. And there's more and more pressure, the faster that blade is rotating. Aside from the pitch and all that, if it's just sitting on the ground, rotating it, if it's sitting on the ground and the people aren't in there yet, assuming the blade is rotating, it could be rotating at 100 RPM, and the pitch would be flat, so there'd be no pressure, upward pressure. People get on the plane, in the cabin of the helicopter, and it could be rotating Usually when you're dealing with civilians, you don't have the blade. Like if you see the president, for example, he gets on his helicopter, which is about a $5 million device, piece of equipment, $5 or $6 million bucks. The blades aren't rotating until he gets in. And then once he and whoever else is going to be in that helicopter, the engine's running, but the blades aren't rotating. There's a clutch that the pilot would then release, and the blade would start rotating. And the engine would, be increased in speed, so that blade would be spinning at about 400 or 500 RPM before he changed the pitch. And then they'd change the pitch to lift it up, which means the skinny end of the blade, right here, would face further down. So the pitch would come down this way, and the other one would go down that way, because it's on the other end of the blade, the other side. Just like a fan blade, but it's a skinny blade. You know how a fan works. Well, it's a fan that's facing down, and the faster that fan goes, the more lift there is to the chopper. It's like a upside down fan. It's exactly the principle. And then this other thing that's spinning on the other side, because there's rotational pressure, they have to put pressure on the other side to keep the cabin from spinning. Because you just want the blade spinning. If you didn't have that little fan in the tail, then the cabin would tend to rotate in the opposite direction of the blade spinning. So we have to. That's what that little fan blade is, which is not so little. I mean, it's probably 4 or 5 feet across. And that rotates and it blows in the opposite direction of the rotation of the blades to prevent the cabin from spinning. The fuselage, you want that to face forward, if you will. So that fan blade increases or decreases depending on how much energy is applied to the prop on top. How about that for a little explanation of the aerodynamics of a helicopter? But that's how they operate. And all that is controlled with a joystick that the helicopter pilot, there's a lot of training, it's hundreds or thousands of hours of experience that, for your helicopter pilot's license. I've never flown one, but I've been in a number of them. We used a French helicopter. I'm trying to think of what it was called. Begin with an A. It was made in France. It was beautiful. It had leather seating and all that stuff. It was a, fancy helicopter for wealthy developers. I was just a paid passenger. I was the almost wealthy developer. I had a partner, he was wealthy. I was getting there. Anyway, we took a lot of helicopter rides. And it was Aerostar or something with an A. You could Google it. French helicopter manufacturer, first name beginning with an A. You do a search. I'll do the search off. I'll get a picture of it and show it to you tomorrow. All right, I've been yakking around here for 2 hours and 10 minutes. Look at that. 2 hours, 10 minutes, and 25 seconds. And the time now is 7:30. I think I'm gonna pitch this coffee out and make another one because it's. Let's see the temperature. It's not 141 degrees. Let's just go full screen here for a second, and we'll take another picture. That's how this thermometer works. See, now it's 124. I would have guessed 85. Yeah, I guess 140 is, it's amazing, you know, your taste buds and everything. You know, you want a coffee, you know, when it's a little steamy. That's like 150 degrees and you sip it. That brings it down to 145. Gets below 145 and it tastes like it's lukewarm, which is fine until it gets to 124. Then it's not warm enough. And you put it in a microwave. You can't put this in a microwave anyway. You have to put it in something else. And then you warm it up and then you put it back in there. And by the time you do that, I'd rather spend, well, I'm out of cream. Oh, crap. Oh, well. I'm not out, but I want to have enough left for Marilyn. Because she'll have a cup of coffee. I can reserve a little piece of cream for her. All right, we'll try to make another cup. In the meantime, I'm out of here. The sun's up. It's getting bright outside. I can see the sun is hitting the doors of my little cubicle here. I can turn down the lighting. All right, so you all have a good weekend. It's Easter. You know, it's the day before Easter. You got Easter Sunday coming up tomorrow. I got a kid. I have to send him the last text message to tell him how to pick up the ham. Half a ham, please. 7 or 8 pounds. Pick a good one. Whatever that means. They don't even show you anymore because of all this stuff with the virus thing. It's wrapped and say, here's your half a ham. They put it in the bag, charge you $100, and see you next year. That's the customer service for the ham people. Yeah. And they got a line of people, you know, for hams. Easter hams. Thanksgiving turkey, Easter ham. The Jewish people eat matzah crackers. As they marched, you know, to Egypt. That's what that's all about. I'm a little bit of both. So, I don't know whether I was coming or going, you know. Boy. Something, I can tell you this, something very exciting happened 2,025 years ago. We're in the year 2025 because our calendar basically started with whatever happened back then, which in my opinion, I actually took a lot of Bible study, would you believe it? No one would ever believe that. I actually read the Bible front to back. Had to, because of I took 4 classes of Bible study. I mean, they studied it like they studied it, you know, with the professor of theology. Not, you know, some evening class where some nice old lady would read a passage. I'm talking academic study, tear apart the Bible, the words, the sentences, try to, you know, get meaning from it, you know, and all the hyperbole that's used in the Bible. What did that really indicate? It was very compelling. I couldn't stop thinking about it, you know. Not about the whole crucifixion thing, although that was terrible, to say the least. But there's something, you know, something celestial happened. like the most dramatic solar eclipse, something, some combination of things, earthquake, solar, lightning, storm, all of the above. There was, all kinds of, things going on that got buried, that got that whole part of the planet, which was the central core of our civilization, so to speak. And they didn't start writing about it until 25 years after the fact. And the lifespan of the human being, because of disease and everything, and lack of refrigeration and lack of medical care, and was probably 40 instead of 80. So if you didn't start writing about it until 25 years after whatever this, I'm just going to call it whatever this craziness that went on, and I don't mean disrespect. As a matter of fact, in the beginning of these classes, the professor would say, I am going to tear your hearts apart. From whatever you think you knew about religion, you're going to be so upset with the things I'm going to say, which I'm probably upsetting people right now listening to this. But just as a scientist, and you just read and not take it apart, but try to just totally rip apart these sentences to understand what they might possibly have meant by saying these passages. Let's try to, take each section and study it real carefully and try to write it in our own words using our scientific and our intuition that we know because we're more sophisticated people than those people. We are. I mean, there's no question about it. I'm talking to you right now on the internet. They didn't have internet back then. They didn't have typewriters. They didn't have they didn't have nothing but sticks and bones. And, that's why they didn't live long, because they all died of disease because, there were bacteria everywhere. And they had no way to control it. They didn't have refrigeration. They didn't have water filtration systems, and all the systems and things we got, and we're still dying, We're still poisoning ourselves one way or the other because of our sophistication. All right. Now it's 5 minutes later. I keep talking. As long as you keep listening, I keep talking. All right, I'm done. You have a marvelous Easter celebration. 85% of our country is Christian, so you've got a lot of Bible study going on right now and tomorrow and tonight and so forth, and the people that don't normally go to church are going to get ready and go to church tomorrow and listen to their local pastors all over the world in celebration of something that spectacularly happened 2,025 years ago. That's a lot of generations, If you divide that by, let's say, 50, the average lifespan over several thousand years, how many generations would that be? Well, we'll take 2,025. Let's just divide it by 55. It was 35 then, and it's 80 now. let's just say 55. That's 36 generations. And 25 years worth of that, which is a whole generation almost, went by before any of these people started writing it down on parchment. They could write. They didn't have typewriters, but you could scribble stuff with pen and ink on parchment. So that's how they wrote stuff down. And then years after that, it was written again, because they had better parchment and better pens years later, and they would elaborate on what was written 10 years ago, and 50 years ago, and 100 years ago. So you go through that whole period of time of, let's say, 2 or 3 generations after some unbelievable, spectacular event that occurred that shook up the entire, it's like banging on a pile of ants. Something, so spectacular happened that all the ants started running around in circles. Well, that's what happened with society. Everybody just, went into crazyhood. And so something happened. No matter how unreligious you want to be, you have to just say something happened that is unexplainable. I'm talking about people that I wouldn't call them disbelievers, but it's not like heretics where they actively refuse to believe. We don't mean those kind of people. We just mean people that don't buy the story. They don't necessarily believe it, as opposed to I believe your story, I don't believe your story. So they're going back and they have a cursory view of the Bible, and they don't believe the whole story. And that's understandable, because there's 5 different people that wrote the Bible. Do you know that? The JPDE, they used letters to designate, and you can go through the Bible. We did it. And you get to know how the J author wrote his pieces, and they put these 5 authors, and he wrote about this, and then he wrote about that, and they kind of stripped them all together. So all the J stuff got put together, and all the P stuff got stuck, and that all got amalgamated into a single Bible. And it took, a decade to do that. So they started writing about it 25 years after the event, whatever it was. And it was something that, 2,000 years later, 36 generations later, we're still talking about it. And the pastors all over the world right now are talking to their parishes, trying to describe what happened. And they don't know what happened. They've just studied the Bible. All they can do is, no one had a video recorder back then. So they wrote it down, but it took a long time before they even wrote it down. It was so spectacular event that they didn't even get to writing it down. They were in such a turmoil, talking with each other, arguing with each other, fighting with each other, whatever. The bee's nest was shook so spectacularly that it took them 25 years before they started writing it down. If I recall that correctly from the academic studies we did of the contents of the Bible. That's what it was. We dissected the Bible as academic people, not as religious people. Okay? I guess that's why I was so excited about the first class I ever took in such a topic. you know, unbelievable. I was training myself as a chemist, and I took, you had, you know, as a student of, in college, nothing's changed that much, you know. I'm on the faculty right now at a 30,000 student university in South Florida here, you know, Florida Atlantic University. And I went to school, you know, 50 years or 60 years ago. 60 years ago. Ooh, it's frightening. It's the same. It's the same stuff. You got a classroom, you got a teacher in the front, you got the other classes on the other side of the desk, and I'm on this side of the desk. Talking about different things, you know, in a more sophisticated society. In some ways it's better, in some ways it's not. Most ways it's better. We have better devices and equipment and understanding of things, supposedly. But as far as the academic, you know, the one remark I'll make is, you know, when I went to school, you kind of dressed up a little bit. You wore, using today's terms, you know, you wore good shoes. They were polished generally. You wore, you know, nice khaki pants. I'm just talking about the boys now. You know, with a belt, and you'd have you know, a shirt, not a tie necessarily. The faculty all wore ties. The students, no. So you'd have an open collared shirt, definitely a collared shirt. You wouldn't go to class in a t-shirt with a print on it, or no. You wouldn't go in shorts. You wouldn't go with sneakers with no socks. No. You wore reasonably good shoes, no sandals. You know, shoes, socks, I'd say golf pants, something like that, you know. You can all imagine what that is. A collared shirt. It could be white or a colored shirt. You know, not like day-glow orange or something. It would be, you know, modest colors, you know, light blue or, you know, white shirt. Open collar. Not open down to your navel, you know, maybe one or two buttons open from the top. You know, some people wore ties. You know, that was like 5% of the boys wore a tie. I didn't wear a tie. I had an open collar shirt, but I definitely had, you know, good quality long pants. You know, not suit pants, but you know, like khaki pants. They could be black, they could be blue, they could be khaki color, not white. Socks and shoes, not sneakers. No. If you had a gym class, you had separate gym clothing, which you change into, and then you would change back into your school clothing before you go to the next class, if you had a class after gym class. If you had a gym class. Yeah. Anyway, I'm talking about college now. Yep. So today, to me, the student body, they look like a bunch of slobs. You know, the boys look like dirt bags. They got these big, you know, ugly shorts. I don't even know what you call them, with the pockets all the way halfway down and baggy ass, and they don't have belts on, and their underwear is hanging front. Yeah, I mean, you're kidding me? These kids are going to college? Yeah, Jesus. They don't have any respect like we had when I went to college. You respected the faculty, and you respected the whole school, university thing by dressing appropriately, and call it that way. Student body looks, now the girls, they, well, you know, some of them, you know, they wear these tight things and no undergarments on top, and you know, they're they don't, you know, they're not dressed appropriately. They're so tight, they're almost see-through. That's not the way to go to school. No. You want to dress around that way, when you're home, in your backyard. That's one thing. That's not the way you show up at a university campus to take a class in physiology. How the hell are the boys and girls supposed to concentrate on their studies if they're walking around in their underwear? That's what it looks like. I'm on the faculty and I see these people walking around the campus. You gotta be kidding me. These kids look like a bunch of dirtbags. They don't comb their hair right. They look terrible. They look like they didn't shower, yesterday or today or 3 days ago. They probably smell bad too. I don't know. Now, most of the teaching that I did was to adults, not school, people that were in business, interested in digital photography. Some of my students were, heart surgeons, thoracic surgeons. They were interested in digital photography because, there's a lot of photography, for medical procedures, medical textbooks. Some of these doctors produce television performances to demonstrate the procedure or something or other, when they're taking apart a heart valve or something. So there's a lot of imagery, obviously, in the medical community. So that's why a lot of doctors took my class. Plastic surgeons, I had 4 or 5 local plastic surgeons that took my class more than once. Dr. Mann took it 2 or 3 times. And every time he came, he brought another doctor with him, or 2. He walked into the class one. I said, if you take my class once, you can come back any number of times you want. You don't have to re-register and pay again. You pay once, you take the class. You want to come back the next time, you can just walk in and tuck yourself in the back of the class or anywhere you want to. If there's room for you, you may come back in. And some of these people came back several, 2 or 3 times, which was fine with me. If there was room, why not? But you didn't have to pay again. That was just my particular policy. I had my own little policy. Even though I was teaching at FAU, maybe the dean wouldn't like it. I don't know. I don't think if it was an extra seat, let someone sit in there and, you could do that right now. You could go into almost any university and sit in a classroom and they wouldn't pull you out of the seat and throw you out. You could probably sit in any number of classes. You wouldn't be registered. You couldn't take a test or get it graded because you weren't on the roster, but you could sit in and listen to the class. Probably almost any class that's given in any school anywhere. Probably. Anyway, enough of that. Oh my God, now it's 2:34 and it's 7:45 and I'm dying for a nice fresh cup of coffee. So you all have a great Easter weekend because our boys are working on Sunday. One of them, they're both working. So we're going to have Easter Monday this year. But we're picking up the ham today. Number 4 son is picking up the ham because he drives right by it on his way to work. That's another reason why I'm getting off the call here. So listen, you all have a great day. And I'll turn the music up and turn the microphone off. And then I have to go to full screen with I go to the top here and find that right there. just like that. And then I give you music, and I will see you Monday morning at 8:50.